Let's see what we got now. We had we had talked about. I saw you post in a group where they you had claimed that Neanderthals were a race of modern humans. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Well, let's go here too.
Now, I needed to ask something just to verify this. Like, were we going to do like 2 5-minute rounds?
Well, I don't know how long mine is going to take. I put a few slides together here, so
okay.
I'm just going to run through those. It may be 6 7 minutes. It may be 10. I don't think it'd be any longer than 10. Probably 6 7 minutes, something like that. So, but are we ready to go then?
Sure. Three rounds then. Last one be like a 2-minute round. Wrap it up.
Sure, whatever. Again, okay. I got the presentation, and then you can have equal time to that. So let's take a look right now. It's 3:10. I can start a timer here if we need to, and we can do that. So, all right, just a little bit about me, and you can introduce yourself too. I am not a professional scientist, but I am an origins person at the Arizona Museum of Natural History, where I'm a volunteer. And I'm down there a couple of days a week where I reach thousands of children every year. So, and we do some outreach programs for local schools and the Mesa Arts Center and other things too. So I am a member of the Geological Society of America, the Southwest Paleontological Society, the National Center for Science Education, and again, I volunteer at the museum. So, I didn't know I still had that was one of our outreach programs where we're teaching kids paleontology there. So didn't realize those were still in there. Okay, Homo neanderthalensis, or Neanderthals. They are, a lot of people call them the caveman, found in Western Europe, or all throughout Europe and Western Asia, from 400,000 years ago to 35,000 years ago when they went extinct. First ones were discovered in 1829, before Darwin's theory. It was actually the only human non-Homo sapiens fossil we had found prior to Darwin's theory of evolution. So literally hundreds of fossil specimens have been found, and they are genetically distinct from modern humans. This is the Leiforassi skull. It's the most complete Neanderthal skull ever found. You can take a look at that and see some obvious differences there with the brow ridges, the size of the nose, what they call a classic example of Neanderthal anatomy there. Cranial capacity is actually over 1,600 cc's, which is larger than modern humans. On average, they had a brain 10 to 15% larger than us. Well, there I am holding the same skull at the museum. So if you kind of look at the shape of its skull and my skull, you can tell the difference right there. So many differences. Again, the angle of the forehead. They didn't really have much of a forehead. The Leiforassi, this skull in particular, at least, has almost more of a forehead than most of them did. The shape of the brain case, they had kind of a peak on the top on a lot of them. The large occipital bun in the back. The angle of the cheekbones was different than ours. Their cheekbones were larger. They had a continuous brow ridge across the front of their face. Nasal bone projected more, as well as it being a larger nasal area. And they had no chin, or a much reduced chin than what we see in Homo sapiens. We compare the rest of their anatomy, postcranial anatomy, with modern humans. Their limbs on average were thicker. They had a more conical rib cage, a larger rib cage than ours, and shaped different. Much thicker hand bones, a wider pelvis, and on average, one of the reasons they were shorter than us was their lower legs. They're shorter. We see that throughout the Neanderthal populations, where their lower leg was shorter relative to the rest of their leg there. This is the oldest DNA we have from Neanderthals. Some dispute whether it's Neanderthals or whether it's actually Homo heidelbergensis, because it was right at that transition phase with them. We'll get into that in just a minute. You look at the number of bones we have from just this one site. The remains of 28 individuals dated to 430,000 years old, using 6 different dating methods. Okay, it's the oldest hominin DNA ever recovered. And it shows that we shared a common ancestor with the Denisovans. But these had Denisovan features, but also had unique Neanderthal-like features. How and when did we diverge? You can see the kind of our family tree here with Homo erectus back here. We've got Homo heidelbergensis right here in between. Can you see my mouse, by the way? Is that showing up on the screen? I just didn't know. Okay. We've got super archaic homos, not Homo sapiens, but hominins, I should say. They kind of went in a little bit different direction and died out mostly in Asia. You see them on the top. We're on the bottom here. This is modern humans, Homo sapiens here. The Sema hominins we just talked about are right here near the Denisovan Neanderthal split. And again, 430,000 years ago. What we see in comparing the Denisovan genome, because we have that one too, it dates about 60 to 80,000 years old. We have that from some teeth that were found in Asia there. We can compare that genome with the Neanderthal genome and with modern Homo sapiens. And we can see that there was interbreeding going on at different times, starting at around 120,000 years ago. And that was probably when most of the interbreeding happened. We can look at genetic markers in the genome and see how far back that was. So again, by sequencing ancient and modern DNA, by comparing the differences and calculating how much time was needed for the variations to accumulate, scientists can create timelines for when different populations split. This current model shows the genetic splits that would have occurred several generations after the different human populations became separated. All right, going further, the Neanderthal genome completed in 2010 shows that modern non-Africans have between 1% and 4% Neanderthal DNA. These findings are based on bone samples of 3 Neanderthals excavated from Croatia's Vindija cave. I'm 1.5% Neanderthal. I had my genome done here just recently, towards the end of last year, and looking back over 50,000 years ago, I picked up some Neanderthal genes, and again, 1% to 4% if you have any European ancestry, so it wasn't very surprising. Here's a little bit different look at the split and where the interbreeding occurred. Over here on the left, again, we have our common ancestor, which would have been Homo heidelbergensis. We have the Neanderthals on the top, and where they actually died out here. Homo sapiens going in a different direction, where if you look at the very bottom, we have the San Bushmen. We have other South African tribes where we don't see any Neanderthal. What we see is the Neanderthal interbreeding took place in here, and we see that going onwards to Asia and into Europe. The Denisovans are the eastern cousin of the Neanderthal. We have their DNA extracted from some teeth, and we know again that they left Africa by about 550,000 years ago, probably as Homo heidelbergensis, but then diverged. Asians have up to 5% Denisovan DNA, just like have up to 4% Neanderthal DNA. Now, here's where it gets interesting and how we know that there are different species. The Neanderthal Y chromosome is distinct from Homo sapiens. We can see it in their genome. We see it in several different samples that are taken, and we never find it in modern humans. Now, that means that the male Y chromosome from Neanderthals was never passed down to modern humans. We just don't see it in our genome. Now, they did start mating early. You know, again, at least 100,000 years ago is what we estimate. There's a female member here, this specific one, and this was actually pretty recent. Just found out about this one myself. Female member of the lineage that gave rise to Homo sapiens in Africa mated with a Neanderthal male more than 220,000 years ago. It was much earlier than thought. But what happens is the mitochondrial DNA completely replaced the ancestral Neanderthal mitochondrial DNA. So not only do we not find the Y chromosome from Neanderthals in modern humans, we don't find the mitochondrial DNA either, which again shows that we are definitely a different species. Neanderthal art, we're going to touch on that just briefly. This was a slide from my debate with Kent Hovind, and you know, they pretty much invented the hashtag. They didn't do a lot of art comparable to what we saw in modern humans, just very about the same time or just after that. Modern humans were doing things like the Chauvet cave paintings, 30,000 BCE. I mean, just 10,000 years before that, we don't see any of the anything like this coming from Neanderthal. I'm not saying they were stupid. I think they were very well adapted to their environment, but their brains were arranged differently. Of the gene 1,000 years ago. We see the Neanderthals are up here in Europe. They're also in Western Asia. Homo heidelbergensis was hanging on in some parts of Europe there. The sister species, or almost could be the same species as heidelbergensis, was still hanging on. That's Homo rhodesiensis down here in Africa. The very last of Homo ergaster, which was Homo erectus, was found in Africa. The earliest Homo sapiens were found, some will say even up to over 300,000 years ago now, 315,000 years ago, but they're archaic Homo sapiens. These are not modern Homo sapiens. They were sort of transitional features still. Homo naledi, I had a good chance to spend some time with Lee Berger last year and here in Mesa, and we discussed a lot about Homo naledi. It was just announced at that time. Well, actually, it was just prior to when they announced that they were only 235 to 335,000 years old. Prior to that, people had estimated around 2 million years or 1.8 million years based on the characteristics. But when the dating came in, it really surprised everybody. Again, in Asia, we had Denisovans. We still had some Homo erectus there. And the little guy, Homo floresiensis, the hobbit, was down in Java, north of Australia there in Indonesia. So these are different species of humans. Now, again, ergaster and erectus may have been the same species. Heidelbergensis and rhodesiensis may have been the same species, shared a lot of traits, but they were geographically isolated and wouldn't have been interbreeding at that point. But we definitely know that these others were different species of humans. Now, how do we get genomes that would show Neanderthal DNA, but we don't see a Y chromosome or mitochondrial DNA passed down? It was either selectively removed through natural selection right away or quickly, like we see with the mitochondrial DNA in that African population we mentioned earlier. But we also can have what is called hybridization. I think everybody would agree that lions and tigers are not the same species, but we have hybrids called ligers and tigons. And while most of them are infertile, some have been known to interbreed with the parent species, not so much with each other. I mean, you aren't going to take two ligers and make another liger, but a liger might be able to mate again with a tiger or a lion. And that's how some of this genes get transferred from one species to another. Same thing with coyotes and wolves. I think everybody agree that they're different species. Sure, they're both canines or whatever, but they are different species. But just the same way, we can see that they can at times produce fertile offspring, especially when they're breeding back with one of the parent species. And just to wrap it up, the closer and more recently diverged two species are, the more likely they're able to sometimes produce fertile offspring. That's how two closely related but different species like Homo neanderthalensis and Homo sapiens were able to interbreed, although we don't see evidence of Neanderthal Y chromosome or mitochondrial DNA in our species. All right, and how long was that? About 12 minutes. Sorry, I went a little longer than I thought. So your turn. Sorry there. I'm not hearing you, Wolf. I think you're muted.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. I stepped away for a second there. I'm sorry.
I hope you didn't miss anything.
Oh, yeah. I heard you. But, okay, my name is Eric, and I'm just a fellow that's interested in the truth. I'm a Christian. I'm a creationist. And I've found that when I came to God understanding that God's able to do anything, any way that he wants to do it. It didn't matter to me if God used abiogenesis and evolution, or if he didn't. If it was special creation, poof, there it was. But I did want to know the truth, so I set about to study, and what I found out, what I've studied, I've found out that what we have in our textbooks, what we have in our popular magazines and etc., is way overblown from what we actually have in peer review. For instance, you were going on as fact that we're related to Homo erectus, we're related to Heidelbergensis, we're related to this, we're related to that. Now, you have a great hypothesis there, okay? The only problem is it's untestable. You just simply cannot test it. And so you don't even have a workable scientific theory. If it's untestable, you just simply cannot call it a theory. And what you're going to have in order to test your hypothesis is the actual DNA from these alleged ancestors. Now, you can look all you like, but that doesn't really mean anything. Any kind of a similarity, that doesn't mean anything. Okay, just random similarities, whatever, it doesn't mean anything. You can't test it. You see, you're basing this on your observation. Now, there's another thing. So the fact that you can't test it, you don't even have a workable theory. But then I want to talk about the fraud that we found in evolution from the moment it began. Evolution is the only science, alleged science, that I know of that is completely fraught with fraud from its very beginning. Now, I'm not talking about Darwin, but the men that came after Darwin. Because it seems to me people have been stretching to try to prove evolution is true, to try to prove that all of this can happen without a God. Now, first of all, I want to dip into abiogenesis for a moment and just say, we don't know what started life. I can take you to a 41-minute video with Richard Dawkins and Craig Ventner and etc. And they say they don't even know if we're going to have an answer within 20 years. Craig Ventner says not in this lifetime. So without abiogenesis, you can't even have evolution. And all of this points to a God, because God is, in fact, more, I guess you could say, compatible. He more closely fits observation than does abiogenesis. By that, I mean we have the actual science of biogenesis. Now, biogenesis teaches us that it takes life to produce life. It takes conscious life to produce conscious life. It takes intelligent conscious life to produce intelligent conscious life, naturally. So abiogenesis is completely contrary to what we observe in nature. It's never been proven in a lab. It's completely falsified in its every attempt. So you're believing in a falsified theory, first of all. And a theory they don't even have any hope, well, maybe a slight hope that maybe within the next 20 years or this lifetime, they'll understand how it could have happened. But with all of our technology right now, we still can't figure it out. You see, you can pile up all of this stuff, all of the building blocks to life. You can shock it, electrocute it, strike it with lightning, radiate it, do whatever you want to it, but you're not going to make it pop to life and start replicating. And that's what had to have happened at some point down the road in this universe, okay, for there to be life in this universe. You just can't do it. What's missing is the spark of God, the life. Now, that's what we bring next to the table, is that a living, conscious, intelligent God bringing forth life, putting his life, his consciousness, and etc. into life, is much more compatible with what we see in biogenesis than is abiogenesis, which is completely contrary. Now, I want to bring up a few frauds here. These are known frauds in evolution. We have Nebraska man, we have Piltdown man, we have Orsa man, we have Ernest Haeckel's evolution embryo fraud, where he stated that he had these embryos in front of him and he drew all of these different, and we do go through different stages, don't get me wrong, but he drew things on there that were just absolutely fraudulent, saying we had gills and etc. Well, those weren't gills. So anyway, he was busted by his own people, okay? He was busted by his own people for plagiarism and fraud. And yet still people believe this crap. Now, then we had the evolution of the horse. Now, National Geographic, January 1981 says, regarding the evolution of the horse, if it were true, now this comes from National Geographic, if it were true, you would expect to find the earliest horse fossils in the lowest rock strata. But you don't. In fact, bones of the supposed earliest horses have been found at or near the surface. Sometimes they are found right next to modern horse fossils. O.C. Marsh commented on living horses with multiple toes and said there were cases in the American Southwest where both fore and hind feet may each have had 2 extra digits fairly developed and all of nearly equal size, thus corresponding to the feet of the extinct Protohippus. Now that's from National Geographic. Then we have known dating frauds, where they're trying to date these people and their tools and etc. Robert Rudolph Reiner Rudolph Robert Protsch, what a name. Protsch had plagiarized the works of colleagues and systematically falsified dates on numerous Stone Age fossils. During their investigation, the university that Protsch they said that he was unable to work his own carbon dating machine. That's from skeptic.com, by the way. So they came out to say, in the end, quote, the commission finds that Professor Protsch has forged and manipulated scientific facts over the past 30 years. That's from Anthropologist Resigns in 2005. So evolution has been absolutely fraught with fraud. And today we have some fraudulent things going on with evolution still. For instance, you were talking about we're related to all of these alleged ancestors. The problem is you don't have a drop of DNA to prove this. It is all complete speculation. You can just, you can hang on to your hypothesis if you want, but it's an untestable hypothesis. You don't have the DNA from any of these. And you can't prove that any of them are related to anything. That's what matters. Now, you also brought up the dogs, okay? That's another place where I believe evolution is fraudulent. Because you see, we do have dogs and wolves in the same species, and we have coyotes in a separate species, and yet they are able to actually reproduce fertile offspring. We have coy dogs completely taking over certain parts, coy wolves taking over completely certain parts of the country. So bear with me a moment here. I'm going to try to share something with you. Now, I could pull this up. Let me try to put this on a larger screen. There you go. Okay. Now, right here, I don't know if you can see it, but here we see a coy wolf. I could go into the Smithsonian Magazine and read the article to you, but suffice it to say, coy wolves are taking over eastern North America. So, in fact, they don't just interbreed and produce fertile offspring. They do so quite frequently, and they're taking over parts of North America. So, and we have the same thing with coy dogs. Coy dogs are able to do the same thing. Now, that brings us to, you're talking about the different shaped head of the Neanderthal and etc. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean a thing. Shorter leg bone, that doesn't mean a thing. Dogs and wolves are in the same species.
Hey, Eric, I hate to interrupt, but you have about a minute left to keep it on equal time.
Okay.
Right.
Dogs and wolves are the very same species, and we have Chihuahuas, we have pugs, we have Great Danes, we have wolves. All of these are the exact same species. And yet, if you were to dig them up fossilized, how would you interpret it as an evolutionist? Okay. You would probably interpret it the way you're interpreting the Neanderthal and these other alleged human ancestors that you have zero proof for, that you have zero tests to prove that they are, in fact, human. So I'll go ahead and forfeit the rest of whatever seconds I have. You can take your second round here, and then I guess this is going to be a 5-minute round or something.
Okay, I don't think it'll take more than just a couple, actually. But yeah,
okay,
you were right on 12 minutes there. Good. Okay, I'm not sure how long you stepped away, Eric, but we actually have the completed genomes. You said we have no DNA. We have the completed genomes of Neanderthals at around 40 to 60,000 years. I think we have them again about 80,000 years.
They don't claim to be an ancestor.
Hold on. And also we have the 430,000-year-old Homo heidelbergensis Neanderthalensis split, which we have the complete genome. We have the DNA for all those. Oh, absolutely, we do too.
No, you don't produce it.
The Cimo de los Huesos, yeah, we have the completed genome for them. I can bring that up for you if you're disputing it.
Heidelbergensis. Let's see the genome for that.
Okay, well, it's right at the Heidelbergensis and Neanderthal split, and again, some will call it one, some will call it them, but it is 430,000 years old and ancestral to the Neanderthals. We have that, and it's also they're ancestral to the Denisovans, and we have the Denisovan. Hold on, let me finish. We're not in an interrupting phase here. Okay. We also have the Denisovan genome. Okay, we have archaic Homo sapiens DNA, and we have modern Homo sapiens DNA. So you're claiming that we don't have the DNA is absolutely incorrect. We have several sets of DNA going back 400,000 and over 400,000 years that conclusively shows that they are related. Okay, but that they are distinctly different species. Okay, now you brought up abiogenesis and a whole bunch of different things there. We're not going to cover that because that wasn't part of the topic, okay? Two things, though, here is that you did agree that different species could produce fertile offspring. I heard you say that when you were talking about the coyote and wolf and that. So I think we can both agree that Neanderthal could be a different species and still produce fertile offspring if they're closely related, like with Homo sapiens, which again, the topic of this is whether they're the same species or different race of the same species. And just one last thing is, I'd like you to define race as you meant it when you said that they were a different race of modern humans. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to answer just a few things here. No, you do not have the DNA of those things. You cannot produce it. You can produce the DNA of the Neanderthal and the Denisovan. That you can produce, I agree. But those damn you, they don't help you. And I'm going to show you why. Because right here, we have the actual definition that we use for species. And this is a group of like organisms, okay? A population of interbreeding organisms capable of producing fertile offspring. Now, you said that we would both agree. No, I don't agree that the dogs are separate species there. I believe that's fraudulent. Okay, the only people that have a problem with the definition of species are evolutionists. Creationists have no problem with this at all. Evolutionists have a problem, and you're going to hear people say, well, it gets messy. Well, no, this is a very simple definition. If it's a population of interbreeding organisms and is capable of producing fertile offspring, it is the same species. I don't care if it's a coyote or a wolf or a dog, okay? It's the same species. They produce fertile offspring, and they're taking over entire areas. And it's the same with the Denisovan. It's the same with the Neanderthal. Over 20% of the Neanderthal DNA is preserved in our DNA, over 20%. And that can only be because we reproduced and developed fertile offspring that came down through the centuries and thousands of years since then. So yes, we are, by definition, the same species. There's just no doubt about that. Now, evolutionists have a problem with that. I'll agree with that. You have a problem with putting all of these dogs in the same species, but you see, you're trying to paint the illusion of evolution, and it's just an illusion. Okay, you do not have the DNA of the Homo erectus. You do not have the DNA of the Homo heidelbergensis, whatever he was. You don't have the DNA of the Homo rudolfensis. You don't have the DNA of these guys, and you don't even know what the common ancestor was supposedly was between us and the monkey. Okay, you just don't. You don't have that. Now you can claim it all day long, but you don't have it.
Okay, well, can I have a chance here to rebut, because you've gone for quite a while there? So
okay,
can you see the screen?
What was this? The last couple minutes?
Yeah, can you see the screen that I'm projecting right now?
Okay, I'll put it up.
See it.
Okay.
Okay, this is the 430,000-year-old DNA where we have they have sequenced the DNA, and we have the genome of the Neanderthal Homo heidelbergensis split.
You have the DNA of the Neanderthal.
Yes.
Yeah.
The dawn of Neanderthals.
You have the DNA of the Neanderthal. You don't have the DNA of anything else that you're trying to
Well,
say.
we also have the Denisovans. We also have
I agreed with that.
archaic Homo sapiens and modern Homo sapiens.
We interbred with
and
the
you specifically said we did not have the DNA that
I said we don't have the DNA of an ancestor. But you don't claim the Denisovan and the Neanderthal.
This is it right here. This is the dawn of the Neanderthals.
No, the Neanderthal is not considered an ancestor. The Neanderthal is never.
Well, Homo heidelbergensis is, and this is at the split. So,
well, you don't have the heidelbergensis DNA.
Let's not talk over each other. Look, I was really quiet while you just went through your last few minutes. Cool. Just give me a minute, okay?
Okay.
All right. And here it is. We do have what you said we didn't have. This is and some paleoanthropologists
where it says we have the DNA.
Please, come on. You want to call us now and just if you want to concede right now, that's fine.
This article says we have the DNA of a Neanderthal.
The dawn of Neanderthals, correct. So, where it pushes back the divergence, and if I could scroll through it, if we could find articles on it, I can also find where people will call it Homo heidelbergensis, okay?
Well, no, you don't have the DNA of a heidelbergensis that is ancestor to us.
Yes,
you don't have that. You don't have the DNA of an ancestor. Find us anything that we have the DNA.
And what we have, the semas are on the side going to Neanderthals and Denisovans.
Produce anything that says we have the DNA of an alleged ancestor.
Okay. Now, you also said earlier, that different species can produce.
No, I said that's where the fraud comes in. Your illusion
no, you specifically said coyotes and wolves.
The same species.
Well, you backtracked and changed it, and you're not.
I am not changing a thing. I said yes, the way you're classifying them, but you're not classifying them according to the definition of species. You need
the definition of species is very blurred.
Classifying these animals under the definition of species does not allow you that. They would be, if you use the definition of species, a group of life organisms that are able to produce.
Well, you didn't answer my other question, the one question, because it is in the title of the debate. Okay, I need you to define what you meant by Homo neanderthalensis was a different race of modern humans.
How much DNA do you have?
That has nothing to do with the question.
Well, sure it does. How much pygmy DNA do you have? Do you have any?
That has absolutely nothing to do with
Do you have any pygmy DNA in you at all?
Are you going to answer the question?
Well, yeah, a pygmy is a race of man. Do you have any pygmy DNA?
I asked you to define it. I'm not going on a question and answer hunt with you.
Okay, if the
Okay.
pygmies
I
went,
don't know. I
the
have not.
pygmies have a
Pygmy
different
was
type.
not. I could have pygmy DNA in me. I have no idea. I'm
Okay.
sure we share at least 99.99% of the same DNA. Okay,
Look, dude,
because
if
we're
we are
both
the
Homo
same,
sapiens.
if we are
That
the
is
same,
clear.
if we are the same species as the Neanderthal, and by definition we are, then they are a race of man. Just like the pygmies are a race of man, like the Zulus are a race of man.
Well, define race.
If something were to happen, oh, everybody knows what race is. Quit trying to deflect from the fact that you don't have any DNA. And according to the definition of species, dogs and coyotes and wolves should all be in the same species. You're giving an illusion of evolution where there is none. And according to the same definition of species, that all of biology and all of taxonomy accepts, humans and Neanderthals and Denisovans are the same species because we did interbreed and we did produce fertile offspring.
Okay, Eric, I'm going to thank you for your time. It's been a great discussion,
and I look forward.
And I wish you well.
Thank you for allowing me to mirror this. I appreciate that. You have a great day, Bill. It's been a great debate. I appreciate everybody that's listened. Thank you very much for that too.
All right, thank you. And you can check out my website at creationsciencefiction.com.
And you can check out my YouTube channel at Wolfbitn. I am at Wolfbitn on YouTube.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. God bless you, buddy. Have a good day.